Well, hello and welcome to this CAP Institute Coach Training Intensive preview call. I am so excited about our conversation today and having you. So I know some of y'all are still coming in the room, and we are going to talk a bit about coaching, what it looks like once you've gone through coach training. If you have thought about coaching, especially if you've thought about coaching full time, I think you're going to really enjoy this. We're going to have some Q&A. In fact, if questions come up for you as we are talking today, I invite you to go ahead and put them in the chat. So number one, you don't forget your questions. And number two, so we can capture all of them. I want to make sure we answer as many questions as we can. So my name is Valerie Burton. I am the founder and the CEO of the Coaching and Positive Psychology Institute, which we call the CAP Institute for short, CAPP, standing for Coaching and Positive Psychology. And I have been doing this coaching thing since 2002. Oh my goodness. I don't know how 21 years went by so fast, but I remember so distinctly discovering what I call my tribe when I went through my first coach training, because I thought what I was passionate about was so unique. And when I discovered there were other people who absolutely love helping people grow into their best version of themselves and helping people to get to their goals and get clarity of purpose and vision, it was, I can't even fully describe it, because it was so transformative for me in my career, in my business, but also because although my focus was around what I wanted to do and how I wanted to impact people, ultimately coaching has transformed my life, because coaching is a way of life. Coaching gives you a set of tools to navigate your own challenges and to get clarity about your own vision, not just professionally, but personally. And so when I look at the things I've overcome, and when I look at the goals that I've actually been able to achieve, I always look back to coaching. It was the unexpected gift of discovering this career field. So I am super excited to get to chat with you today. If you have, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that you can answer in the chat as we're getting started. But I'm wondering how many of you have ever been coached? Have you ever experienced what it's like to be coached by a professional coach? If that is you, I want you to just put it in the chat. Been coached. If you haven't been coached yet. It is such an awesome experience. Yeah, I'm seeing most of you have been coached. Some of you are saying never. We want to change that for you. Yeah, just started being coached. Yeah, my experience of being coached was a big part of my developing such a strong belief in the power of coaching. And when I started over 20 years ago, there was more skepticism about coaching than there is even today. And there's still skepticism, right? Because so many people haven't experienced it, and there's been misinformation about what coaching really is and the power of that process. I also would love to just know where you all are joining us from today. So if you don't mind, in the chat, telling us, where are you right now? I am south of Atlanta, all over Miami, Phoenix, Oklahoma, Dallas, my old stomping grounds. I lived in Dallas for 8.5 years. Poland. Hey there, Robert in Poland. So good to have you. Durham, North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland. I will tell you, as I name off states, I've lived a lot of places. So like, oh, I lived there. I lived in Maryland. My family's from South Carolina. I've got family in North Carolina. I lived in Texas, California. I was born in Florida, and now I live in Georgia. So yeah, any of those places. I love seeing some of you from countries outside the US. I see you, Nigeria, the UK, excellent. New York, Las Vegas, wherever you are from. Disney, he's at Disney right now. Love it. That sounds so fun. Mississippi, New Orleans, excellent. So good to have all of you. St. Louis, I see you as well. So we at the CAP Institute, we've trained coaches from every state in the US. At this point, we are at 26 countries and counting on 6 continents. So you're in great company if you should decide to join us for coach training and become a part of the CAP Institute family. So what we're going to do today is different from what we've done in the past. I just want to have a conversation with a successful coach who happens to be a graduate of the CAP Institute as we talk about what it looks like to coach full time, to combine coaching with other types of helping services, which a lot of people who coach don't just coach. I was one of those people. I was writing and speaking before I started coaching. And before that, I had my own public relations firm. My background was in journalism. I went to grad school for journalism and discovered my calling around inspiring others. And that started with me writing a book, which then led to speaking opportunities. But what I discovered was that coaching was the one-on-one of what I was writing and speaking about. Without realizing it, writing and speaking became a natural marketing vehicle to be able to coach, because once people were inspired when they heard me speak or they read something that I wrote, not just in books, but sometimes in columns or newsletters, then they would want to ask me what they could do with me, right? And coaching is what they could do, whether it was one-on-one or group coaching. And so a lot of coaches do more than one thing. And I want to assure you that that's perfectly fine. In fact, depending on what your skill set is and what your interests and passions are, that might be right in your sweet spot. So we are going to have this amazing conversation, and then we're going to open up for some questions. But I want to start us off with one more question. And this question is informed by positive psychology. So just so you know, we didn't just make that phrase up to start a company name. I know for some people it sounds a little made up. We mostly have our ideas about what psychology is. But positive psychology, and that term came along about 25 years ago now. It was coined by Dr. Martin Seligman, who is an esteemed and renowned professor at the University of Pennsylvania. And Marty was president of the American Psychological Association back in the late 90s, when at their annual convention that year in 1998, he challenged researchers from universities around the world to start to balance out the field of psychology, particularly in the area of research. Many of us, when we think of psychology today, we think of fixing problems. We think of mental illness, even when we call it mental health. So we think about things like depression and anxiety and PTSD. We think about mental disorders and so forth. And part of that has to do with the funding for research, particularly from the mid-20th century on, as we have been through 2 world wars. So there was a lot of government funding of research on what goes wrong and how do you fix it. It was very important. When psychology started in the late 1800s, it was largely about both areas, mental illness and mental health. So if you go back to the early part of the 20th century and the late 19th century, it was as much about success and happiness and flourishing as it was about things like depression and anxiety and mental illness. And so the research skewed in the second half of the 20th century to really be more about illness, in large part because that's where the money was, right? And so when Dr. Seligman challenged researchers that year, you began to see a shift. And many of us have noticed over the years, the last 20 years or so, a lot of books, a lot of information around things like strengths and gratitude and happiness. And we talk about these things a lot more than we used to. And that's in large part because of positive psychology. So when I began coaching in 2002, over time, as I saw coaching worked, I began to wonder, because so much of coach training was anecdotal, just, somebody's good at coaching and they have their method and then they create a training around their method, but it's not necessarily validated by research or by science. And the question that was coming to me is, what does the science say about this? What does research tell us about what it actually takes to perform at your highest level, to increase your well-being and so forth? And so in doing that, I discovered positive psychology. I went back to grad school a second time at the University of Pennsylvania to study applied positive psychology with the intention of creating a coach training program that is rooted and has a foundation in the research, hence the CAP Institute being born. So I want to ask you all a very simple question that comes a little bit from positive psychology, and it's a question around gratitude. This is a great way to start any coaching conversation, in large part because cultivating gratitude naturally induces positive emotion, and positive emotion, as the research shows us, broadens our scope of thinking. It helps us when we're setting goals to see the bigger picture, to be more creative, all of those good things that help us to set better goals. So my question for you is, what are you most grateful for right now? Like when you think about what's been happening, maybe it was over the weekend, maybe it was last week. It might have to do with relationships or something in your career or health or finances. When you think about what you are grateful for, what comes to mind? I will start, and then as something comes to mind for you, just share it in the chat. I am super grateful for my beautiful blended family. I am so grateful. We had an incredible weekend. My oldest bonus daughter is headed to college. We're flying up to New England a week from Thursday to drop her off. New England's nowhere near Georgia, y'all. I know she's ready. She is. We're so proud of her. But we realized this is the last weekend that we were going to spend together, the five of us, while she's still home. Of course, we'll have many more weekends with the five of us, but it won't be the same as what it has been the last 10 years that Jeff and I have been married. It's kind of a closing of a chapter and opening of a new one. But I'm grateful for the chance to have served as their bonus mom. And I am grateful for the moments that we have had together and the memories we have intentionally created. And just the gift of getting to be a parent, which was part of my vision that wasn't realized until I was over 40 years old. So that was a long journey for me. So when I look back over this weekend and I think about those things, and I think about the vision that I had when I started coaching 21 years ago, and how long it took to even get to that piece of my personal vision, I feel super grateful. I feel super grateful in part because I feel like when I wrote and created my vision board back in 2011 or so, it was to manifest what I'm living right now in my family life, in my business, and so forth. So I'm grateful for that. So I'm going to just look for a second at some of what you all are grateful for. Put my reading glasses on, or as my eye doctor calls them, my computer glasses. He told me that as I become more refined, they will get stronger and stronger. So I call myself refined now. Yeah, I love that, Anna. Positive communication in my family. Kelly, the wonderful life God has given me. Love, love, love it. Take up the space to explore my purpose, Ashley. I'm grateful for the liberty I enjoy in this country, UK. No wars, no persecution. Amen to that. Lawanda, the time to vacation with my adult children and get everyone back to work and college safely and refreshed. Yes. So I love all of these. Thank you for sharing. Now I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. I want you to reflect on the thing you just said you're grateful for, and just reflect on why. Why are you so grateful for this? Like, why does it matter? What is your why? I gave you my why. My why is I had a vision, and honestly, when I was in my mid to late 30s and it wasn't coming together, it was hard to have the vision. Sometimes I felt very vulnerable to maintain my vision for marriage and children, but I couldn't give it up because, like, giving it up meant I was giving up the whole thing. I wasn't really willing to do that, right? So this has strengthened my faith. That's one of the reasons I'm grateful, right? And I can ask, because my faith is strengthened, what am I going to use that for moving forward, right? Love it. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Why are you grateful? Joe said, health equals friends, family, and classmates who've been so fortunate. Monica, it helps give me peace of mind. Nothing like having peace. Oh, I love this. Yes, Sarah, my son is so interesting and fun, and he loves me back. Is that not awesome? Being loved back. Yes, yes, yes. So I asked you to reflect on the why, because the research shows us that when we reflect on why we are grateful, well, first of all, when we reflect on what we're grateful for, it produces positive emotion, and positive emotion shifts our brain chemistry, makes it easier for us to set goals and stick with them. But reflecting on why we're grateful actually deepens the gratitude and increases the amount of positive emotion we feel. So anytime you say, what am I grateful for? Or you ask a client that question, or a coworker or your child, and say, why are you so grateful for that? And it actually deepens the gratitude. Are y'all feeling a little positive emotion as you just reflect on those things? Yeah, these are some of the things we talk about in the CAP Institute, those simple ways that you can use the research of positive psychology, human flourishing, and performance to be more effective with your clients, to shift what's happening with them right there in the moment. All right, let me introduce the man of the hour, Chris Berry. Chris Berry graduated from the CAP Institute programs in 2019. I am absolutely thrilled to have him join me. Chris is a life and a career coach. And one of the things I can say about our graduates is that they use coaching in so many different ways. We've got relationship coaches, executive coaches, leadership coaches, business coaches, career coaches, life coaches. As a matter of fact, one of our grads, she might even be on here now, discovered this year as she was going through our coach training program that she's specific to adoption coaching, working with parents who are in the adoption process. So there's no limit to how you might apply coaching. Even if it seems very unique, there may be an audience that needs just what you have to offer. Chris's passion is around serving those who are in career and life transition. And it's a passion born of his own personal experiences with company reorganizations and layoffs. Anybody relate to reorganizations and layoffs? Sometimes they provide opportunities we didn't know we were ready for, but when we get kicked out of the nest, we go, oh, yeah, maybe I'm ready, right? The idea of feeling stuck in an unfulfilling career, and being blessed in the union of a blended family. I can relate to that, Chris. But his business includes not just coaching, but speaking and facilitating for organizations worldwide. His background in business includes an MBA. So many of our graduates have amazing backgrounds that they're building on as they move into the field of coaching. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. And where are you joining us from today?
I am in Nashville, Tennessee, Valerie, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm
You're
honored.
just right up the road, just a
Right,
4-hour
right.
drive.
Yeah, too close. When I see these posts from you saying you're in Nashville, I feel some kind of way.
That's
I'm
awesome. I just spoke in
just
Nashville in June at the Music City Center.
I
I
saw
love
that.
Nashville, but I got to tell you, I was cracking up because we came out of the hotel, walked directly across the street, and there were all of these like party buses driving by at like 10 a.m. Like, I didn't know Nashville was such a party all day long now, but it's very fun and they're getting a lot of conventions.
That they are.
So, Chris, I want to know, like, what initially drew you to coaching?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you hit the nail on the head in that career transition moment. So if anyone's worked for an organization and you're used to having the company laptop, and then Monday rolls around and you no longer have that company laptop, and Tuesday happens and Wednesday happens, so now you go a full week without, you start to ask yourself the question of what what am I going to do next? what's possible, right? And it was in that moment that things started happening. My church started asking, "Hey, are you available to do some tech support and put together a DVD for the women's ministry?" Sure, why not? Had some friends call that one of their coworkers was actually going through a career transition of themselves, and they were actually interested in the project management space, which was my background. And I
Mm.
ended up talking to them, and it was just so refreshing. End up talking to this person and kind of understanding their story and their journey, things they wanted to learn. And I was sharing some of my challenges and roadblocks, and really a pathway for opportunity to be fulfilled. And 2 to 3 hours later, hang the phone up, and I don't think I had ever felt that refreshed and energized
What
in a
was it
conversation
that left you feeling so energized from the conversation?
because I helped somebody.
Mm.
And that they actually believed that it was possible, even though they thought they didn't have enough hours to sit for the project management certification. And I said, well, you may have more hours than you think. Sometimes you have to get creative. And so just kind of exploring. So before I knew about the Acera model, I was in the exploration. Probably that's kind of how I'm wired. So let's explore what's possible.
So
Uh,
let me just stop you for a second. Acera is our structure for a coaching session. It is the coaching model of the CAP Institute. It is rooted in research, and it makes coaching so much easier because you know exactly where you are in any coaching session, where you should be going, what kinds of questions to be asking. Your client doesn't know what you're doing, but you always know what you're doing. And we
right.
teach it on the very first day of our coach training intensive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Chris, when did you decide, hey, you know what I'm doing? Maybe this is kind of like coaching, even though I haven't been trained in coaching. When did you figure out that going a bit further and understanding what coaching is and then deciding to be trained as a coach was the right path for you?
Yeah, I think if this was a movie, there would be a prequel that would go 5 years before that career transition, that layoff. And in that moment, I was in a role that wasn't as fulfilling, and I didn't feel like I was as supported as I wanted to be.
What was your role?
I was a kind of an IT developer, kind of a real technical role where I didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of um, people facing
I
conversations.
was going to say, anybody who's a coach probably likes talking to people. You better anyway.
The thing about
IT
computers, they don't
developer
talk
doesn't
back.
seem, yeah, IT developer doesn't seem to be totally in that whole
Yeah,
line
yeah.
of thought. Yeah.
So I wasn't gifted in it, and I didn't enjoy it, which is really a bad combination to be in. But that kind of gave me the courage to say, okay, well, what type of IT professions allow you to take some of your technical skills, but try to relate to people? And that's where the
Mhm.
project management piece came from. And in that project management journey, being able to lead projects, have direct reports and some non-direct reports, I always believed in that employee that may be overlooked, maybe even marginalized, and maybe even
Mhm.
feeling stuck because nobody even stopped to ask them. And it would hit me at certain moments. I was that employee.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
now I'm able to speak on their behalf behind closed doors to say, well, are we setting them up for success? Well, I didn't know that was a good coaching question. And so those type of things were kind of already in me. And now we lead to the 2018 moment of transition, a personal transition. And it's like, okay, I need to do something that's for me. And let's explore if there's positions, there's roles, there's training that really aligns to my strength and values.
This is so powerful, and I want everybody to catch it because it's typically a journey to determining and figuring out coaching is the thing. Like, I honestly, the first time I heard of coaching, I was in PR and marketing. I was good at it, not passionate about it. Um, it was easy for me. But deep down, I always felt this thing that was like, this is not where you're supposed to be, like 5-10 years down the road. If this is what you're still doing, you're not going to be happy with yourself. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but you just know that there's a different way to use your skills. And sometimes I think it's a journey. Like, we don't necessarily just figure it out automatically, but if you're getting those nudges, don't be scared of it. Don't be scared that you're not feeling you're in exactly the right place right now, because that's just information. If you use a coaching approach to that, you would say, what's the message in this for me? Mm-hmm. And the message doesn't necessarily mean quit your job today, but the message might mean, hey, this isn't it forever. And if, for example, for some people, it's not a matter that they're going to jump out and start a coaching business, but it might mean that they are looking for a different role within their organization that allows them to utilize their skills and their passion. And so many organizations really, really need that. So I love hearing that around your journey. So Chris, when you decided to start training, you start with the Coach Training Intensive. What was well, first of all, when you went through the Coach Training Intensive, which is the 3-day foundational training that we do. And it really is, I always say, for a lot of people, if you're thinking about coaching, but you're not ready to like fully commit, but you think maybe this is the right path, this is a really great way to jump in, get the skills you need to actually start coaching. I started coaching in 2002 with my first training that was 2.5 days. It was with Thomas Leonard, who is considered the father of the modern coaching profession, started the first coach training program, founded the International Coaching Federation. I had the privilege of being trained by him in 2002. Thomas passed away very suddenly 10 months later, and I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to learn from him then. But Chris, you went through CTI. How did that shift what your effectiveness in these conversations that you'd started to have, and how did it affect your confidence to actually step out and pursue coaching in a bigger way?
Yeah, one of the things that I love that you mentioned earlier was about coaching can be in a variety of hats. Yeah. And so during the same 2018 parallel track of investing in CTI and learning more about coaching, my church also asked my wife and I to lead our college ministry. And so serving in those spaces was always about, pouring into young adults and how can you become the best version of yourself, and what does your career journey look like, and just having open conversations and that whole exploration. So that kind of CTI gave me some kind of nuggets on what questions to ask, and even a mindset of it's okay to incorporate coaching conversations into a Sunday school lesson, into a Bible class, right? And then I also continued in my kind of IT professional track as well, and it made me a better leader in organizations, because now I'm not just asking for a status update and asking, hey, is it red, yellow, or green? There's a kind of compassion behind it and understanding, hey, maybe if you're late, maybe there's something else going on. And maybe I have a one-on-one that I talk to you about because no one else even bothered to ask.
So really developing people to have a greater level of self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a big piece in coaching. I mean, actually, that's one of the core competencies, is that a coach is able to help someone have a greater level of awareness, which helps them to better be able to see what problems they need to solve in order to move forward.
And you'd be amazed when you actually just stop and ask someone, hey, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? And especially working in, intense positions, high visibility projects, a lot of pressure, where someone that you don't necessarily report to, but you work with, it actually took the time to ask, how am I doing? And now I'm an advocate for them, right? And even to ask themselves, hey, the reason I'm asking for these updates, like this is the goal, and this is how you fit in the goal, because some people don't know how they fit in.
They don't know. So what I'm hearing you say is, when we look at coaching in the context of a corporate role,
Mhm.
One, you're deepening the relationship with the team members that you're working with.
Mhm.
People realize they're being seen as a human being and they're being seen in terms of their potential. And that when there are problems, you're not looking at it as a finger pointing, I don't like the mistake you're making. You're looking at it from a perspective of curiosity.
Mhm.
What is that about? How is that serving or not serving the greater goal? Where is your purpose in the greater context of where we're trying to go as a division, a department, or a company? I mean, those are huge things that actually create for that team member a sense of purpose
Mhm.
and confidence. It develops their leadership. It provokes thought for them, and they're realizing, wait a minute, if I'm going to improve the way I'm showing up, having these kinds of conversations help. It actually increases engagement when people are coached, even if they're just coached in the context of everyday work conversations. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm seeing. And that's what I know that the
No,
research shows us. But is that
absolutely.
what you were seeing?
Absolutely. And it leads to higher retention rates, right?
Exactly.
Uh, and
Because
even
where else are you going to go and get that kind of feedback,
Mhm.
have those kinds of conversations?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're growing people. They might move on, but they're actually moving on
With
better
purpose.
and bigger. What did you say, Chris?
With purpose.
With purpose. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So how has coaching contributed to you speak and you facilitate, you're a corporate facilitator. So how has coaching contributed to your efforts as a speaker and as a facilitator?
Yeah, as a facilitator, I love being able to facilitate those classes that are kind of that personal development, those soft skills, because there's always a prompt in that training that says, well, now what? Now you've heard this training. Now, how are you going to apply it? And even, create collaboration amongst people that cross-functional teams to say, hey, is there opportunity for growth? Is there opportunity for networking? And it's just that having that mindset of what's possible. So
Mhm.
it's more than a class. I've even incorporated the gratitude moments in each of my classes that I start. It's kind of funny because I'll get chatted on the side. Chris, you're taking too long. No, no, no. I blocked out time because everyone's gonna go around the room and give a gratitude moment because it changes the atmosphere of the
Yeah, it
class.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it shifts how people feel from an emotional perspective, but it also creates a greater sense of connection throughout the team because sometimes people share things you had no idea, right? And now you know something about them, you're celebrating in something with them that you didn't know about them before that helps you see them in a new way.
Yeah. And it goes back to the question of you don't know because we never asked.
Right. you know, as an author and as a speaker, what I didn't expect when I began coaching is I wrote my first book in 1999. That sounds so ancient now. Like there was probably the first 15 years you said, oh, 99. Now I say it and I'm like, I'm talking to people, they weren't even born yet in 99 and they're in the workplace, right? So it kind of messes with your head. But when I wrote that first book, I wasn't coaching.
Mm.
Um, and then I started getting the speaking opportunities and I started being asked to do a lot of media, TV interviews every week, radio interviews. I was on some specific shows each week. What I didn't realize when I started coaching was that it would make me a much better writer and a
Mm.
much better speaker. And the reason for that is that previously I was speaking from my own perspective. So this is before I even discovered positive psychology, right? So I was sharing from my perspective what I had learned in the business world, what I was observing maybe of others. But as I began coaching, I'm dealing with everybody else's challenges and opportunities. And I'm walking alongside them as I'm coaching them. And so it gave me a richer bank of scenarios and challenges and opportunities that I might never have, but I walked along with hundreds of people, right? And so that was powerful and it was unexpected and it gave me a much bigger perspective. That's how coaching for me has contributed to my speaking career, my writing career. And sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, Chris, sometimes I've had clients and they have no idea. They bring a scenario to the coaching session that reflects exactly what I'm going through at the time. Of course, I don't say that to them because you don't project your own personal stuff. But I might get an answer to something I'm looking for while I'm coaching someone else. And I don't know if I think we partially attract that. I think some of it is just, where we are. But I have found not only has it impacted my speaking and my writing, but sometimes my coaching someone else actually coaches me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Little nuggets, and it's that pause in the moment where you're like, oh wait, I'm the coach. Wait, okay.
Self-management is very important
Yeah,
in coaching. We talk a bit about that, not injecting our stuff. But it's beautiful when that happens, when we get something out of it for ourselves that was kind of an unexpected gift. So one more question for you, Chris. What would you say to someone who is unsure about investing in coach training? Maybe they feel like, coaching, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to call it coaching because, of course, coaching isn't regulated. So
right.
anybody can call themselves a coach. What would you say to that person who's thinking about it? They want to be an effective coach that earns their worth, but maybe they're hesitating. Maybe they're hesitating because of time, because of money, because maybe they're thinking, I can just figure it out on my own. What are your thoughts for them?
Yeah, if you wait long enough with anything, you'll probably come up with enough reasons not to do something. And my thought would be, maybe the question is, how can I pull out the best in others if I'm not the best version of myself?
Oh, yeah.
Let me say that again for the people in the back, right? How can I pull out the best in others if I'm not the best version of myself?
Yeah.
And having that mindset, whether it's career, health, fill in the blank, it's a mindset to say, okay, I want to drink the same Kool-Aid that I want to give back to people and partner in people's journey and let them know like we're all on a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that whole idea of being the best version of yourself and also not going it alone.
Right.
Sure. I mean, I find that just about everyone who goes through our coach training is really, really intelligent, already quite accomplished. I'm in awe of people who graduate from our program and who we attract because they're already accomplished. They're already doing great things. I mean, and they don't even tell you. Like sometimes I'm talking after somebody's been through training. I've had people go, "Oh yeah, well, I'm a neuroscientist. I'm a surgeon. Yeah, I've been practicing law for 15 years. Yeah, I head up the HR department for this company." And you just go, "Oh yeah, I've been deployed to Afghanistan 3 times, and I've taken people through some pretty scary circumstances." And you're like, "Wow, why is that?" I think because people who are attracted to coaching are people who know that change is possible. With a process, with resilience, change is possible. And they want to see other people win and other people succeed. There's just a natural kind of a positive energy that comes with coaching. But I think a lot of people who are attracted to coaching also know how to make things happen, which means we can be tempted to say, I'll figure this out on my own.
Mm.
That was me. I waited 2.5 years before I did any training. I was super skeptical of coaching. What is this? Is it a real profession? That was me. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it. And then I loved it. I actually started coaching, but I didn't go further in my coaching and my being credentialed for another 3 years. I was on the fence. And then when I finally was like, no, I'm all in, I was like, why did I not do this 5 years ago? That was my experience, because once I was all in, things just multiplied very, very quickly. I love hearing your idea of, yeah, this is about being the best version of yourself. It's, I think, the best marketing. When you're out there stretching out of your comfort zone, people notice, because most people want to stretch out of theirs, even though they're a little bit afraid to do so. So when they see somebody who's coaching, who's doing it, who's walking the talk, it's like, oh, that's the energy I need. So what I have found is when you take those steps to be professionally trained, there are opportunities and things that just begin coming your way because you're walking the talk and people can see it.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you want to invest in yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I think we're just afraid, is this going to pay off? What I love, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So many of our graduates in the middle of the first training of CTI, after the first day, are like, oh my gosh, I've earned back what I've already invested in this first day because I've learned so much. Just taking away the Acera model in itself is transformative.
Right.
The thing is, for us, part of our goal is helping you not need to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a way to do it and you don't need to figure it out because we have already figured it out. We just want to walk alongside you and make it easier. And then you run with it, making it what makes sense for the vision that you have as a coach. Chris, it's really inspiring and fun to see you walking this out in your business, using what you learned in our trainings with the CAP Institute. Your marketing is outstanding. We're always seeing you out there doing things. And I just really appreciate your willingness to have this conversation and to share. So I'm going to open up with for some questions, Chris, and some of them might be for me and some of them might actually be for you. I don't know if we warned you about that, but you're a coach, you can handle it. So one thing I want everyone to know is we do our coach training intensive, our 3-day live virtual event, which is amazingly engaging. Like if you've done training online, what we're hearing from people and what we've heard for quite some time now is that the online training is far more engaging than anything they've experienced previously with doing training. And so we've been very, very intentional about that. So we do them once a quarter. We have one coming up September 9th through the 11th. And the third day is all business development, helping you walk away with your business development plan. As a matter of fact, Chris, your experience with the business development plan, how did you use that with launching your practice?
Yeah, it let me know how far away the gap was.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a bad thing, right? Some things you just need to know of where you're trying to be versus where you are, right?
Yep.
And that's that current assessment, future assessment. And what I like about it is you can do it quarterly. You can do it every 6 months. You can do it yearly. And I would encourage that because there's so many things change. Your focus change, seasons change. And so I definitely appreciate that tool.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a coach training intensive coming up September 9th through the 11th. Registration in September 5th. So that is coming up. We train, again, it's a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So the first 2 days are all coaching and positive psychology. The training happens between 10 a.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Eastern each day. We do that to try to make it the best time for everybody. As you can see, even on this call, we got people in the UK, Poland, Nigeria, of course, in the United States as well. So some are getting up super early, if you're on the West Coast, let alone if you're in Hawaii or somewhere, but you can do it. You guys get to finish early. The later people, when we have people that are 8 hours ahead, are doing it later. But everybody's been able to experience that. We've had people in Australia and Japan do the live virtual, Dubai, South Africa. It's been pretty amazing to see all the different places that people are coming from. So Alexis and Kristen, our program, that manage our program, coordinate our programs, and they're dropping links in the chat in order for you to register. Also, they'll be dropping the email if you've got questions after this call. So let me read some questions, or if I'm missing any, Alexis, just say them for me. Okay.
You got it. I'm keeping track too. So just go ahead and I'll let you know if there are any left over.
Okay. So Tiffany asked, do you have to have a master's? I think you're saying a master's degree already. No, you don't have to have any specific education to be a coach. We have had people come through our coach training programs who were had medical degrees, law degrees, PhDs, and we've had people come through our coach training programs who had a high school diploma. So there is no specific educational requirement to be a coach. We find that we have a lot of people who come from backgrounds like therapy, counseling, psychology, and so forth that may have masters in counseling, social work, psychology, etc. It's everybody. So there is not a specific degree requirement for coaching. All right. Can you share the time schedule again? Okay, it looks like we've answered that one. Valerie said, I struggle with knowing I want to pursue coaching practice when I retire in 3 to 5 years, and when to start preparing when I know the time commitment is challenging right now. So one of the things I talk about this in a book I wrote called It's About Time, The Art of Choosing the Meaningful Over the Urgent. And that is that sometimes to get our answer about the right path to take, we need to be willing to have what I call temperament to experiment. That means that we try something out. And then after we've tried it out, we come back and coach ourselves. What worked? What didn't work? How do I want to move forward from here? The Coach Training Intensive is a great experiment. What I can tell you is that the skills you will walk away with, you're going to use in your current profession. You're going to use it in your relationships. You're going to use it if you have kids. You're going to use it in a variety of contexts. And you're probably going to see some personal transformation that happens as well. I say all of that to say that you're not going to know if coaching is right unless you try coaching, unless you actually jump in and see what it really is and how it feels to do it. And the Coach Training Intensive is not a big commitment. You're basically saying, I'm going to commit to 3 days of focusing on this. And if I get to the end of the 3 days and I'm like, this isn't it, then I don't have any further commitment. You're not committing to an entire 6-month program or 12 months or 2 years. You're committing 3 days. And it's all about personal growth. So the worst thing that'll happen is you grow personally and you get a set of skills that's relevant no matter your current role. It actually is going to make you more valuable to your organization. So that's a great way to experiment with it so that you can then see. Secondly, I would say we have a pretty good percentage. I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm going to say at least 10% of the people who go through our programs who do it because in retirement, they don't want to do nothing. They want to take all those years of experience and still have something that's producing income, that's very fulfilling, and that allows them to give back from their life experiences. So we have quite a few people who are preparing to coach. And I would say it's better to start that now than to wait until you've retired, because then you're ready to hit the ground running. And in fact, you may find that, maybe you want to start coaching before you retire. You might have 1 or 2 clients. It might not be a huge commitment, but you're kind of already in that space. In terms of the time commitment, I think that's about coaching yourself around what will it really look like, right? So again, the 3-day is not a big commitment. That means you just need to carve out 3 days in your calendar to commit. And then from there, you decide, do you want to go through the full certification? All right. This is Robert asking, Chris or Valerie, if you had to put a finger on one thing that has made your coaching successful, what would that be and why? Chris, why don't you answer that one?
One thing, keep reminding yourself of your why. And it's amazing when, we all have different whys, right? So my why in this season is flexibility, exposure, engagement, particularly with, professionals or entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about what is that one successful piece, it's how do I best position myself for the opportunities? And asking myself that and answering, kind of walking through that, like, what does positioning in a corporate engagement look like? What does positioning look like in a ministerial role? What does positioning look like? Fill in the blank. So that's one thing that has helped me be successful, is understanding my why and answering the question of how can I best be positioned for this opportunity?
I have so many different answers to what has made me successful as a coach. But I think at the core of it would be my strong belief in the power of coaching and walking that out in my own life. in choosing what I call a coaching lifestyle, which means whenever faced with a challenge, being able to apply a coaching approach to solving that challenge. I don't see challenges as problems. I see them as coaching opportunities.
Mhm.
And so no matter what's happening, even in a coaching session, as a coach, sometimes you can get stuck. Like somebody brings something and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I help them with this? And you realize, no, take a breath. This is a coaching opportunity. When you ask the right question, that right open-ended question, and you approach it with curiosity, the answer emerges. Your anxiety lowers and your client's anxiety lowers because now you're exploring, what is this about? What opportunity does this present? If I apply coaching to it, I'm going to find an answer. And I can tell you unequivocally, I have applied this to growing my business. I have applied this to being nervous when I'm about to go on stage and speak to 15,000 people. I have applied this when my first marriage was coming to an end. I have applied this to infertility. I have applied this to getting out of debt. Like, I believe in the power of coaching. And I think because of that, and applying it to my own life, I think that belief often transfers to the clients, and they just allow that process to carry them through and get the answers. You can see I'm like a coaching evangelist, so don't get me started on
Preach.
what coaching is. Oh yeah. Okay, let me see what's next. How did you get your first paying client? Chris, you want to answer that one?
Ooh,
Do you remember?
yeah. Transparent moment. We're all friends here, right? I struggled. I struggled because in my head, I didn't feel right charging because it's a service that I want to do, and you know it's- and
Doesn't
I
feel like
understand people,
work.
yeah, and and I really didn't need the additional income at the time, and I just wanted to help people, right? I don't know if anybody just has that passionate heart just to help. And so I struggled with that for quite some time. But I'm over that struggle now. Well, the first payment, I'll never forget. I know who it is, but I'm not gonna say who it is. Keep that confidentiality, right? Um, but one of the things that really happened, that at the core of how that first paying client came into be, I asked. And I just simply asked, the same way with for those that will pursue CPEC after CTI. I struggled those first couple weeks because we're supposed to do your homework on client sessions, and I'm looking around like, you can only ask your classmates so many times, and I'm just sitting there
Just for
thinking like,
those of you who don't understand, CPAC, we use a lot of acronyms at CAP, is our Certified Personal and Executive Coach Program. And CTI is the Coach Training Intensive, which is the prerequisite to go into the certification. I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
no. Yes, thank you for knowing that. And so part of that, you need to get to 50 hours, right? Yeah. And I was stuck on single digits. And so if week one goes by, week two, week three, week four, it's kind of hard to do your homework with no clients. And then it dawned on me to ask yourself the question, what's possible? What do you have? And I literally pulled out my phone and I sent a message to everyone in my contacts.
Mm.
And you know what happened next?
What?
People actually signed up. So now you're like, wow, now I have to coach them. And it was a beautiful thing, but it was scary because you're like, wow, now what? Like you put it out there, you asked, and now they want to know. In some of the sessions I had, I kind of felt bad, like, oh my goodness, like I didn't know this was going on in your life. But you have to keep your coach hat on, right? But just put yourself out there to ask and understand that it doesn't have to be the best website. All these systems in place don't have to be. Like, I literally asked myself the question, what do I have? I used to do, well, not used to, in our college ministry, we would do move-ins. So as college students would move in, I would do like a little sign-up sheet. It's a free tool called Sign Up Genius. And it dawned on me, I said, well, what if I just use what I already have, things that I'm familiar with? And I literally created, hey, here are all my slots available. The first
Yep.
50 get my time.
Yep.
And people signed up,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't have signed up unless I asked.
Unless you asked. And here's the thing, when we start certification, we tell you exactly how to do it. And you can have pro bono clients, right? Some people make sure that they have paid clients. They pay for their certification in the process of going through CPAC. But we show you how to do it. If you have just 2 clients, right? 2 people you're coaching a week, you'll get to the 50 hours during the 6 months. But like Chris said, you have to ask. My first client, I remember her very well. I remember where I was when I was coaching her because I was so nervous because I had done all the training, but I hadn't coached. Oh, she was so lovely. She had read one of my books, and I had started a weekly, well, what actually wasn't a weekly email yet, but I was doing like an inspirational newsletter, and I put it in my newsletter that I was coaching. And but it made me nervous because I was charging her, and she was paying me a nice amount of money to charge her to coach her. And I was thinking, I want to get her to, to an answer or a solution that she wants in this session. It went really well, but I just put it out there. And like you said, when I put it out there, people responded. And for me, coaching was like a faucet of revenue I would turn on and off. So when I was writing a book, I'd let my clients and everyone know, okay, I'm not going to be coaching for the next 4 months. I can pick back up when I'm done, or if you want to move on, that's fine too. And I'd say 95%, when I sent them another email, I'm coaching again, they go, great, let's get started. So it really is about putting it out there. All right, let's see, a couple more questions. Chris, what were some of your aha moments during your transition, and what was the most valuable lesson you learned from the CAP Institute?
I'll answer the second one first. The most valuable lesson, I can hear LaFern, one of the facilitators on the team. I can hear her voice clearly right now. And what she always instilled in us was never take an aha moment away from the client. Because you can be in a coaching session, and particularly for things that you have experience with, that's probably the hardest thing, because you're like, oh, well, just it's right there. Like the answer's right there, but you never want to take that away from the client. Because when you do, you feel good because you're thinking everybody's joined in, but really you deflated. And from a long-term perspective, they'll never own that idea that was already within them.
Yeah, you took the ownership. Yeah, that's so good.
And then the first one, the transition, I'm trying to figure out which transition. I may need some clarification on which transition. But transitions have always kind of occurred every few years. And so I think it's a mindset. Greatest lesson is, hey, this transition is an opportunity to learn and to grow from, and to add to my story base as I share with others.
So good. Thank you. All right, Alexis, if I am missing some.
I'm answering any that are related to questions about times or information about the coach training. There was one more. Give me 1 second. Let me scroll up.
Okay.
We had a grad, Sarah, who chimed in there at the end about how amazing the CPEC experience was for her. So if you had any questions about CPEC, definitely maybe reach out to Sarah there in the chat as well. Joe did have one more question. Did you encounter any challenges in succeeding as a person of color?
Succeeding in coaching, I'm guessing specifically. I'm going to say my audience, I mean, obviously I'm a person of color. So when somebody wants coaching, they know what they're getting. So I haven't had any specific issues around that as a coach. I mean, nothing is like immediately coming to mind. Now there are certainly things in business as a woman or as a person of color that, automatically come up. What I have found, and maybe it's because coaching is a profession that you are constantly in a state of self-reflection and growth. People who are going to be coaches need to be open. They need to be curious. They need to be inclusive. I have found the coaching community to be very embracing of diversity. That's been my personal experience. I would say as an author, the one thing that has come up as I've published books, because I'm on the cover of many of my books, every major publisher I've had at some point, the sales team has had a conversation about whether or not to put my photograph on the cover and how it would affect sales, which is interesting, right? But ultimately, they've decided to try both ways. And my best-selling books, my top 3 best-selling books, all have my picture on the cover. Now, whether it is that there are more people who look like me who see the cover and go, oh, looks like me, who is that? Right? And they grab it. Or that maybe there are some people that say, oh, I don't relate to her. I don't know. I mean, there's not really a way to test that, but I do know that the publishers have had the question mark in their minds, but it has led to them trying both and not coming to any definitive conclusion, but that when I have been on the cover smiling and looking directly at people, and because my message is relevant for everyone, I don't think that it actually has hurt me. And if it has hurt me, we've overcome that because people who are looking for someone they can connect with have actually bought my books in greater numbers. So it may balance out. So that's my initial thought. I don't know, Chris, if you have any other thoughts in that area.
I guess one thing, I guess, for me is it's actually probably helped me from a lot of contract engagement for supplemental coaching. For instance, the last couple of years, I've been able to serve as a coach for advancing Black professionals. And so I guess it's actually been to my advantage to serve in those spaces, because I'm learning that there are not a lot of coaches that look like me.
Yeah.
One observation as well, just from a gender perspective.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I'll go there, Valerie. I don't see a lot of guys, a lot of people, the men. We have room to grow. A lot of my client base, percentage wise, even when you run the analytics of engagement, women are very focused on becoming better, and I feel like men, we're good, right? This mindset of I don't need any help. Why would I ask somebody? Why do I want to be vulnerable? But I love having those opportunities to talk on a man to man, to say, hey, you're not the first to have a challenge. You're not going to be the last.
Yeah.
And so let's partner together.
So
But
good.
you'd be amazed that the challenge you've been signing up or engaged in the conversation is interesting.
That is a very interesting point. And yes, we see a lot more women in coaching and coach training, but the men are there. So if you're a man, you're in this conversation, you're thinking about it, I think we need more men.
Yeah, come join us.
In coaching. Yes, absolutely. All right.
I do have one more question if we have just a minute. I know we're at the top
Yeah.
of the hour, but I saw in the chat that there were quite a few people who may already have had some exposure to coaching, may have even gone through some coach training. And one of the questions in the chat is for Valerie. But if you're already, if you already know coaching is for you, and you have already been coaching, is the 3-day live event the next step?
So the 3-day live event is your first step in this particular process. And we've had a lot of coaches who've done other coach trainings who have then come through the CAP Institute trainings and keep going. So they go through CTI and they're like, wow, this is like nothing I have experienced. The structure, I think, that we give you is so important. We have literally had people that have been coaching for a decade who have plenty of clients who come through our coach training intensive. And after just the first day have said, I have learned more in this day that's going to help move me forward than I've learned previously. That always blows me away. I think part of it is because we are very practical in our approach to training you to coach. We don't want this to be some mysterious process or, you need tools. You need to understand how to conduct that coaching session that moves people forward and gets them to results. And that's what it is that we are very intentional in focusing on. Even as Chris mentioned, LaFern, one of our instructors who's been teaching with us for over 10 years, she went through our first coach training intensive, and she probably had 200 coach training hours when she did that. She's a former Fortune 500 HR executive who was my client. I coached her as she made the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship. And yet she still went through the coach training intensive. So we have a lot of people who fall into that category, and we certainly welcome you. We have plenty who've never done anything in coaching. And because of our approach and the positive psychology piece, it's a fresh way to approach coaching. I know I see Kiva's asked a question about relating to an ACC or PCC credential. It's Associate Certified Coach and Professional Certified Coach credentials with the ICF. So our trainings are rooted in the International Coaching Federation core coaching competencies. From the very first training we did in 2010, we have always submitted our trainings for the ICF to review and to approve per their standards. And our mentor coaching also fits within that process for anyone who's looking to become credentialed as a coach. So we're taking you through a process that, yes, is uniquely our process, but also a process that if you are wanting to not only get a certification from the CAP Institute, but to apply later for your credential through the ICF, then we are preparing you to be able to do that. We think it's very important to also be accountable to an outside professional coaching organization, and that is what we do. Did I miss anything, Alexis? Or did I get them all?
I think that's about it.
Right. Listen, we would love to serve you. We'd love for you to be a part of the CAP Institute family. If you've been thinking about it, I'm hoping this gives you a feel for who we are and how we approach it, and the type of people that we attract into our programs. We really believe in the power of coaching. And if you feel pulled in this direction, we would love to support you on the journey of getting the kind of training you need, the kind of tools that you need. When you go through the coach training intensive, we give you immediate access to a whole host of tools that set up your coaching practice, whether inside a coaching organization or an outside practice of your own. And should you decide, hey, I want to be certified in this, you can continue in our live 6-month training. And we will soon be announcing in 2024 an advanced training even beyond our certification. So keep your eyes open for that, because it's coming and we're super excited about it. So anyway, we'd love to have you as a part of the family. We'd love to see you September 9th through the 11th. So this is your invitation to register for our coach training intensive and to join us. Chris Berry, I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you and grateful for you joining us today and sharing your experience as a coach and your experience with the CAP Institute. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for continuing to pour into us.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, if you've got questions, go to capinstitute.com. You've got all the details there on our upcoming coach training intensive and our certification. And of course, if you've got some specific questions for somebody on our team, please email us. Alexis, give them the email address for that. Are you on mute? Maybe I should. Info
sorry, no, I was just putting it in the chat.
Oh, you were typing it. info@capinstitute.com. All right. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. And hopefully we will see you September 9th through the 11th at the live online coach training intensive. Have a great week.